Alright guys, so we're going to talk about some National Park Ranger records from 1987 in the Gateway to the Arctic, Alaska National Forest. And now these are some of the rangers' actual written records, kind of like a police report of all of the different incidents that happened in 1987. So the incidents start out on March 20th of 1987. They start out in North Fork, Kayuk River. Basically, a plane tried to land. There wasn't enough room, so he tried to come back up, and he ended up hitting a tree with his wing, and he was able to fly to the next campsite, and there were no reported injuries, thankfully. So, basically, there are a lot of plane crashes in Alaska, and this is just a perfect example of one. A lot of times they're dealing with aggressive winds that can flip over the planes, or having to choose a runway somewhat down the spot and land with their skis, whether it be on a river or a large patch of flat ground. This particular aircraft was a PA-18 Super Cub, and like I say, thank God it was able to fly to the next location and land. On August 4th, 1987, there was a pretty bad helicopter crash near southeast of Anakatavuk Pass. Sorry if I didn't say that right. So the initial report came over the radio. Basically, the helicopter was hovering near the ground, and it was trying to let out 3 passengers. As it was hovering, the engine light came on, and the helicopter pilot tried to lift out of it, but as soon as he lifted up, the tail crashed down into some rocks and sent the helicopter crashing. Basically, the 3 passengers were able to jump out. The helicopter pilot was also able to jump out, and they all received some pretty serious injuries in the crash, but they all made it out with their lives, thank God. So the pilot received some severe head and back injuries, and the passengers one of them got a severe blow to the face, and they all received several cuts, bumps, and bruises. One of the passengers was actually in the hospital for 10 to 14 days. So they were in there for quite some time. As I mentioned, the helicopter lost all power according to the pilot, but they are going to do an investigation, or they were going to do an investigation to see if weather was the cause, or just the engine itself killing off, and then the helicopter crashing, and then ultimately bursting into flames 15 seconds later. So thank God the crew and pilot was all able to get off safely. On June 12, 1987, in Katami National Park, Alaska, there was another plane crash. Basically, there were 5 passengers on a plane, and it had flap problems, so it ended up crashing into or skidding into the tundra to a halt. The plane had substantial damage, but thankfully there were no injuries. So on July 6th, 1988, in Katami National Park, there was also another serious plane crash. The pilot was trying to land his float plane. He didn't have enough room, and he didn't check which direction the wind was going prior to landing. So basically he got too low, and he wasn't going to be able to come up in time. So basically he was headed at some trees, and he turned the plane just in the nick of time so the wing would hit the trees. And then basically the wing and the plane smashed along the trees and the edge of the lake bank or beach for about 80 feet, and all of the passengers were uninjured in this accident. Very, very serious crash, and very, very lucky there was no injuries in this particular plane crash. So on Wednesday, July 24th, 1991, in the gates to the Arctic National Park in Alaska, there were 2 friends, a 40-year-old and a 51-year-old, that were out hiking together. They were basically traveling some distance across Alaska, doing some hike for a few days. They were in the area of North Fork of Kayuk River, at Ernie Creek. They were there on July 18th, and the younger gentleman, the 40-year-old, became ill, and he basically had a tent set up by his partner, the 51-year-old, and basically they left the 40-year-old there in the tent. His initials were CB, and basically he stayed in the tent for a couple days while his friend went on to get help. And now, while his friend was gone to get help, fortunately to say, he did pass away. It looks like from natural causes. They were able to go and find him in his tent and get the body back to safety. So in 1999, there was a large oil spill off the coast of Alaska. I believe it was created by Exxon Oil. There was supposedly a 40 square mile slick of oil off the coast of Kenai Fjords and Katamai. And so basically this oil was in the ocean off of the shore. They had basically 43,000 barrels of oil, even after they worked for quite some time to clean some up. In the end of April, they had spotted some other locations off Cape Douglas, also had another area of oil that was about 550 feet long, and there was 108 dead birds and gulls on the beach at that time with oil all over them, an oil slick. So this was a pretty bad oil spill off the coast in 1989. They did work very hard to keep up with cleaning it, and they kept on it really well at the time, and they have very thorough reports showing all the steps they took to get it taken care of. So by May, they had most of the oil in the ocean contained, and they were working on the beach to clean up the oiled up seagulls and different debris on the beach that was covered in oil. Basically, by the end of May, they had 64,000 pounds of oiled debris that they had picked up from the beaches, just to give an example. This cost about $2.1 million to clean up, and there was quite a bit of damage done and quite a bit of cleanup yet for still some time to come. The National Park Ranger report records from 1993 through 1995 in the Gateway to the Arctic, Alaska National Forest, and also the Katami National Forest in Alaska. So we're going to get started on April 14th, 1993. This is a follow-up. It sounds like there was some pretty serious poaching going on with a hunting guide in Alaska. Actually had some clients on his airplane. Sounds like they were flying in the airplane and actually shooting different wild game, large game actually, right out of the plane. So they got caught doing this through a police investigation. They basically checked the kill site where the animals were dead, and they saw like a hind quarter was missing, and then they found the clients or customers of the hunting guide with the actual hind quarter from that animal. So they matched up different pieces of evidence to prove that this poacher and his clients actually did shoot these animals from the air, and they poached them, without proper licensing and that kind of thing. So basically the guide got his Piper airplane taken away, and the clients got a $15,000 fine, and they lost their hunting privileges for a couple years. And now 1993, $15,000 was a little more valuable than it is today, so something to consider. One of the other punishments these guys got was the 300 hours of community service as well. So the way they got caught was actually other hunters saw them flying over, shooting out of their plane, and they shot a brown bear, a Dall sheep, a moose, a wolf, I mean, the caribou, I mean, they're just literally on a killing spree up there, flying in their airplane, shooting all these animals. I could see how that would be exciting at the time, but at the same time, that's not sporting for the animal. That's basically not fair at all. That's not how hunting is supposed to be. So, very inappropriate. Most hunters have moral value, I would say. That is very immoral. I'm not sure how the guide and his clients end up in that position of breaking the law and doing all that kind of stuff together and in front of, up in the air, in front of several other hunters on the ground, only to be reported and caught. So, in total, this poaching incident yielded 9 arrests. So you can imagine this hunting guide is out flying people around several different times shooting animals. So during this arrest of 9 people, $42,500 in fines were assessed in total, and a rifle, an airplane, 6 Dall sheep, 4 moose, 2 grizzly bear, and 2 caribou were confiscated after the arrests were made, and the fines and everything were assessed. So very, very serious poaching charges. As you can see, they lost their hunting privileges for a couple of years. They lost the vehicle that was used in the poaching. They lost a rifle, and they definitely lost all the animals that they wrongfully killed. So on September 6th, 1994, in the Gateway to the Arctic National Park, there were very heavy rains over a several-day period that brought flooding into the area. This caused all kinds of different issues. It caused a person to go missing that was on their boat. It caused a rafting accident. It caused people to be stuck at their camps for 10 days longer than they had initially planned. There were canoeists that lost their boat in high water. There was a float plane that was partially submerged, and the person had to be rescued. There were all kinds of issues during and because of this flood. So on September 6th, 1994, during the floods that I previously mentioned, 4 German visitors to Gates of the Arctic National Park, Alaska, were going to do a rafting trip down Kobuk River. They were told multiple times by multiple different people not to do this trip at this time because of the deep water, with all of the rain and the bad weather. The weather had cleared partially, and they were only here for a short time from Germany, so they decided to give it a go. Basically, they were all thrown from the raft, and one of them ended up going missing. They looked for multiple days for their friend and could not find him. So I'm sad to say this doesn't have a happy ending. Their friend didn't end up being found until nearly a month later, 90 miles downstream. He did have a life jacket on, but it doesn't help you in rapids. You get caught on something and water still comes over your head if you get pinned. So very sad outcome to the story. So on April 18th, 1995, Gateway to the Arctic, Alaska, 4 snowmobilers actually didn't return. They had gotten stranded, their gas cache got stolen, the weather was too bad for the plane to land. All kinds of things happened, so they had to drop food and supplies down to these snowmobilers, and they were eventually able to rescue them after a couple days. Basically, their snow machines had broken down, and some went to get help, and it was just a very chaotic situation. June 27th, 1995, Gateway to the Arctic, Alaska. There was another plane crash. Basically, the plane tried to land in poor visibility and couldn't see how high they were or the ground. So there was 5,000 feet of elevation. The landing gear struck the mountain, causing them to crash. It took 12 hours for rescuers to get in and rescue the victims. There were some minor injuries, however, everyone made it okay thank God. So on September 20th, 1995, very sad story of a park volunteer. Actually, her and a couple other workers or volunteers from the park at Katami, Alaska, were basically out going on a hike. They had just crossed this river a few days previous. The water had recently come up. As we mentioned, there was severe flooding around this time in this area in the gateway to the Arctic, Alaska, and also in Katami, Alaska as well. So the water in the river came up. The other two people that were in the group made it to the sandbar safely, but this gal, initials SE, 39 years old from India, did not make it. She was swept down the river. Her backpack was found 5 miles downriver. As of the September 22nd, 1995, she had not been found. I could not find any records of her being found, so as mentioned, Alaska is a very wild, rugged place. People go missing there all the time. And I thank you for following along to the stories. I appreciate you listening. Please like and subscribe and have a great day.